Hey, Blue Crew. I just got back from some travels where I was walking a ton up and down stairs, 15 to 20,000 steps a day, and my body's really craving a little rolling. So I thought, why not share it with you as well? So today's rolling is going to primarily focus on the seventh functional movement of walking, which is the primary one I've been practicing the last couple of weeks. And you'll need at least a set of balls. If you have a smaller set and the alpha set, that would be great. I'm also going to use a couple of blocks, but those are optional. I'll show you why. Okay, let's start with a check. So, oh, and I have my special guest, Ryan Gosling, is joining us today. It's a big week for him. New movies premiering. Okay, so for our check, I want you to stand with your feet hip width distance apart. If you have a mirror or a reflective surface nearby, that would be great. This is also a good check to do with somebody else. So if you want to take this rolling class with a friend or someone who lives in your house, that would be cool because you can kind of check in and see this in somebody else's body, and you can also use that friend or family member to hold you accountable. So bring your feet hip width distance apart. Place your hands on your hips. Soften your knees just slightly so you're not hyperextending your knees like this, which a lot of us do when we stand, which is why we feel a lot of load in the low back. Soften your knees a little bit. And without shifting your hips back, I want you to imagine there is a string attached to your sternum, and your sternum is being pulled forward as you hinge forward. So instead of dropping your chest down and pushing your hips back, kind of like you would in a squat, I want you to try to keep your hips over your ankles as much as possible. So think about, again, a string pulling your chest forward. So you're hinging forward almost like a deadlift, and go as far as you can, staying in neutral. So if it's helpful to take one hand to your abdominals, one hand to your low back as that tactile feedback, do that. Hinge forward. And when you go as far as you can in neutral, reach your arms forward. I have two blocks there. This is where the blocks come in handy. I also have a wall in front of me. That might be handy. And you're going to reach forward, and now you can round your back and see how far your hands get to the floor. Can you touch the floor? Do you need blocks? How does your back body feel? Are you feeling this in your calves, your hamstrings, your low back? And if you're able to touch the ground, you can just kind of drape your body over, but try to keep your weight forward a little bit versus, again, sitting your hips back, because you'll get a different sensation. And for a lot of people, you might be here. You might not be able to touch your toes. Well, that may change after we roll a little bit today. And then place your hands down, bend your knees, walk your ankles, knees, and thighs together. So everything's glued together. Tuck your toes. And sit back on your heels. It's a little stretch for the bottom of your feet, which will probably feel pretty good. And then untuck your toes and sit your hips down on your heels, and just notice how that feels. We're actually going to start with some foot rolling. So plant your hands down, tuck your toes, bring your feet hip width distance apart, and come into a downward dog. I like to pedal out my dog. Again, I was walking a ton and doing a lot of climbing of stairs. So if you're doing any hiking this time of year, or climbing any stairs, I always think of like baseball stadiums, a lot of stairs up and down. Maybe you're feeling that in your calves. So give your calves a little stretch. My calves are feeling super, super duper tight. Again, that's what's inspiring this little mini recharge session today. And then walk your hands in towards your feet. Grab your set of toted balls, a smaller set. You can always roll your feet with the balls untoted, but for simplicity and time, we're going to use them toted today. And we're going to start on the left side. So you're going to place your foot like this on the balls. I like to hold on to a stable surface, so I'm not, too balance challenge, and roll the length of your foot from the transverse arch all the way down to your heel. And when you use the balls toted, you get a nice wide roll. So it covers a lot of surface area. It's also really convenient because you don't have to tote and untote the balls, which can take time. So if you're in a hurry, you also don't have to worry about one rolling away or your dog, chasing after it. And then bring the balls underneath your transverse arch and put your heel all the way down on the ground, and then step your opposite foot forward a little bit. Get a little calf stretch. Take a little bend of your knee, lengthen your leg, bend and stretch. If you're feeling really tight in your feet, your calves, your Achilles, please, please, please invest more time in stretching and rolling, because that could be an Achilles injury waiting to happen, which are much more common. You've probably seen, there've been articles in all sorts of publications, including the New York Times, often associated with pickleball because that's a sport where people play and it's quick and competitive, and people skip the stretch and the warm up, and people are getting injured. So it's a gnarly injury that you want to avoid if at all possible. Stretching and rolling will help. And then place the balls right underneath your heel. Put the ball of your foot down. And I like, if I'm holding on and I can balance, I like to put my opposite foot on top, and then just kind of wiggle your heel back and forth. If you feel any tenderness in your heel, oftentimes that's where plantar fasciitis starts. So if you ever feel that in your heel, make sure that you, again, are rolling, because that's something you can catch before it escalates. Listen to your body when it's whispering. Okay, and then take a couple steps around your mat and just notice there's a difference between the side you rolled and the side you didn't. My side that I rolled feels much more grounded, much more connected. And the foot feels just a little bit less tight and sticky. And then switch sides. So you're going to roll the length of your foot from the transverse arch to your heel. Oh. And when I use the two balls, the other thing I really notice is like the movement in my ankle. So you can turn your instep down, you can externally rotate and put the outside of your foot down. That sometimes can feel good. And I just sometimes will notice the little adjustment in my ankle when I roll my feet. That's good. You need, mobility in your feet. And if things are tight and sticky, or your feet are been in stiff shoes, you lose some of that mobility and dexterity in your feet, and rolling is a good way to restore that. So much starts in your feet. Your feet are your foundation. I cannot recommend rolling your feet enough. Roll your feet a little bit every day if you wanted to, but start with a goal of a couple times a week. Anyways, I often dissuade people from setting goals of, I'm going to do this every day, because then when you skip a day, you feel bad about yourself. So just celebrate the little wins, even if you roll your feet for a few moments while you're brushing your teeth or drying your hair, washing dishes, and then bring the ball of your foot to the balls and step your opposite foot forward. A little bend and stretch of your knee, bend and stretch, a little calf stretch. Again, my calves are feeling really, really tight. So oftentimes a guided rolling session is great, because you might not know what to roll on your own, which is why we provide these little sessions. But sometimes you'll wake up in the morning, especially the more you roll and the more you tune into your body, and your body will be giving you a sign like, roll your feet now, or you need to roll your glutes. Listen to that stuff, because it's very valuable. You get really intuitive with this stuff. And then switch, put your heel between the balls. And again, I like to put this foot on top without sinking into your hip. So be aware of your posture. When rolling your feet, occasionally I will look down just to connect, like, hello, feet, but you want to avoid looking down the whole time. You want to practice your posture, ramping your head back. You can soften your knee, kind of wiggle your heels side to side. There were times way, way, way back, probably 15, 16 years ago, when I had plantar fasciitis, that my heel was so tender, I don't think I would have been able to stand on the balls like this. So if you notice, like, for example, in our build class, sometimes we'll put weights underneath our heels. If you notice that's really hard for you to put your heels on top of a hard surface like that, that might be a sign that something's locked up in there. So rolling will be a good way to condition your feet to kind of be less tight and are more able to stand on things like the weights. Okay, I'm just gonna take one more sweep, make sure I got everything. Take a couple more steps around your mat. Notice if things have evened out a little bit. And then we're going to come down to the ground and do a little calf rolling. So there's a couple options with this. Some people like two balls toted. I really prefer, and this is my personal preference, I like using an alpha ball. So this is the bigger size. I have a lot of surface area in my calves. So I like to put one ball right underneath the calves. Again, some people like two, you do you. And then my preference for this position is to come down onto my elbows. So you're going to put the ball underneath one calf, cross your opposite leg over like this for a little extra pressure and also for a little stability. And I usually just start by rolling my ankle in one direction. Again, ankle mobility. I'm actually one of those people, I roll my ankle a fair bit, just sometimes walking down, the street, a flat street in normal shoes. But knock on wood, I've never really, been injured because I have a lot of strength in my ankles from all the work we do without our shoes on here to strengthen our feet. But I also have mobility, so that's really helpful. You don't want to roll your ankle when you step off a curb and tear anything. And then go the other way. So we started with a little sustained compression, where you're just kind of putting pressure into the balls. And now we're adding that mobility of the ankle. If being up on your elbows like this doesn't work, you can come down or you can grab a block, a ball, prop something underneath your head. And now I'm going to remove the top leg and I'm just going to kind of think about it as stirring the pot. And if you get really good at this, you can do little figure eights, but I like to move the ball around, and you can play around with going closer to the heel, kind of in the Achilles, which is another reason why the bigger ball works better. Or you can go closer to the top of the calf, but just kind of roll around. There isn't a ton of surface area here to cover unless you're having an acute problem. So I usually just spend 90 seconds on each calf. It doesn't have to be a huge amount of time. We have to get over this fear of I don't have time for another thing, and just make 90 seconds for each side while you're watching TV or checking your email or whatever. Fit it into your day. It will make a huge difference. Okay, switch sides. So I'm going to start again with that sustained compression. Just one ankle over, take a breath, kind of wiggle around, see where you're holding tension, and then rotate the ankle. That is really where I feel it when I start moving my ankle. And you can, again, move the ball up, down, wherever you need to be. Yeah, taking care of your calves, your feet, your Achilles, taking time to stretch before you play a sport or go for a run or go for a hike will save you so much time on the back end. Nobody ever thinks they're going to get injured. We all think we're immune, and then it happens and we're, shocked and saddened and very inconvenienced. Being injured sucks. It not only hurts, but it's a lot of time, right? Think about the cost of being sidelined from an injury and all the things you can't do and all the doctor's appointments and therapy appointments you have to go to kind of rehab yourself. It's a real bummer. So an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure. And then I'm moving the foot and just kind of moving around. You can go left and right. If you do have specific Achilles stuff, a nice way to address that is to take two toted balls and kind of just dock your Achilles in there. That's one option. I get a little bit more pressure with the one ball, which I like. If it's too much for you, and you might want to switch to a different size. The balls come in 3 sizes. I recommend having all 3 sizes because they work differently for different things. When I travel, I usually just bring the medium set. Sometimes I'll bring one alpha ball. This time I did not. I had very limited space in my luggage. So my body is craving this specific roll with this specific tool because I didn't have it with me to do it. I did bring my balls and I rolled a lot of other stuff, but all right. Feet and calves. All right. Set the ball to the side. Turn on over, tuck your toes under, bring your ankles, knees, and thighs together, just like we did at the beginning, and sit back on your heels. Notice if you have any different sensation in the bottom of your feet. Untuck your toes. Notice if that feels any different. We're going to come back up through a downward dog. Tuck your toes, pike your hips up, pedal your feet. Notice how your calves feel. This is one area where it's really helpful to actually look back at your feet and notice how far your heels are from the floor. Sometimes we start like this, and with more foot and calf rolling, you might be able to get your heels closer to the floor, which is usually a good sign. And then walk your hands and your feet toward each other, bend your knees, round up, and we're going to go back to that same recheck where we started. So put your hands on your hips, soften your knees a little bit. And again, instead of shifting your hips back, imagine a string is on your sternum and someone across the room is pulling the string to hinge your torso forward, trying to keep your hips over your ankles as much as possible. Stay in neutral as long as possible. Notice how it feels. Notice how far you can come down. I've already noticed I can go way further in neutral than I could before. Take an inhale. Exhale. Now you can round your spine and gently bring your hands to the blocks, to the wall in front of you, to the floor, wherever you can reach. And just relax into this and notice if your range of motion has changed. We did not roll our hamstrings. We did not stretch our hamstrings. We did not roll our low back. But a lot of this ability to, for example, touch your toes is related to mobility in your feet. It's crazy. We always think, oh, I have tight hamstrings. I can't touch my toes. If you have tight feet, you probably have tight hamstrings and a tight back. It's all connected. You got to start with the feet. And then walk your hands back in towards your feet. Bend your knees, round up. Take a big inhale. Inhale gratitude for yourself for making this time for a mini roll. Exhale. Well done. Hope you enjoyed that little mini session. I'll catch you next time.